I'm preparing my deck for upcoming tournament play, so I'll be practicing a lot on OCTGN. By recording and rewatching my play, I hope to spot and correct errors in both my play and my deck. As such, commentary will be serious and uninteresting, only focus on my mistakes. If that's not what you're here for, this video is not for you. Thanks. Gabe deck, standard Gabe deck versus HP, engineering the future. Hand, Sneak Out Beta, and 2 AI breakers, 1 data sucker, which is good against big HP ice, and a dirty laundry for money, so definitely a keep hand. I think I made the right choice here. First turn, make him rest ice. Here's the mistake. I decide to sneak dirty laundry archives, which I guess is fine, but after that I should have ran R&D. I should always pressure him to rest ice. I didn't do that. That was a mistake. I need to know what ice is protecting R&D. And even if it's an Ichi, I'm fine with losing my data sucker. It only cost me 1 click and 1 cred to install. Ever since I started including data sucker in my deck, I find that I'm much more resistant to running, and that is a very, very bad sign. This should not be the case. Gabe is all about early aggression. If I lose the early aggression, I lose the game. Draw into a Plan Assault. This gives me options. HQ, heavily iced up. Very bad sign. He really doesn't want to be a Count Siphon. Archives is my only route now. I install the single beta. Big mistake. I forgot I don't have enough memory, so I trashed the ferry. That is a waste. That is a total waste of my time, of my ferry. Since I have no recursion, this was a very, very stupid mistake to install the ferry right off the bat, bringing me to 3 MU when I'm not in fact going to use the ferry for anything at all. If anything, what I should have done was to run straight face plant into R&D. If there are any Ichis there, I won't lose any programs. If there happens to be a barrier or code gate, so be it, I'll suffer the consequences. I'd rather use my ferry on an Ichi than to waste everything that I have, waste the ferry that I just installed. So that is a very, very stupid mistake. And yes, now looking back at it, this was a horrible play. This is definitely atypical of me. I definitely play much better than this, typically. Once again, I tried to install a Corroder. Yeah, it was a very late night when I played this. But excuses are excuses. Nope. My goal here is to get my standard breaker rig up, because looking at his ice, I deduce that it is not a set of Bioroid or ice, rather that it is a ETR spam, cheap ETR spam. So I need to find lots of ways to deal with his cheap ice, and all the ice that he rests with ABT confirms that a Rototerra and a pop-up window, all cheap ice. So if I get my standard breaker suite up, there's nothing he can do to stop me. Actually, this should have been assigned to get rid of the data sucker as well. I don't think there will be any ice that would challenge my data sucker, except maybe Viper. That's about it. Instead, I'm very reluctant to get rid of it, and also reluctant to get rid of my Sneak Out Beta. Another bad thing. Draw into a Count Siphon, which I can't use. I'm looking for the Code Gate Breaker. Alternatively, I can jump my knight onto his Quandary, but I have to face 2 other pieces of ice. This is what happens when you are not aggressive early enough. If I jump the knight to his Quandary earlier and ran through it, perhaps I could have forced him to rest what was the outer piece of ice. Instead, I'm giving him so much opportunity. He now gets to Biotic Label another gen out of hand. Yes, he is getting out of hand. Thanks to my horrible poor play. This is looking grim for me. I suppose I decided I needed to do something now, and I rightfully did so. Install the knight there, and a desperate account siphon run. He has 2 credits, so he can't do anything about it. Cannot rest any of the ice in front. I don't care, I'll take the tax. He can blow up same old thing if he wants. I have a Plan Assault ready to siphon him another time if I need to. He clicks for credits. My knight jumps over. I use the siphon mostly to get up to a decent credit level. And I summon my indexing. I'm definitely grasping at strings here right now. So I paid for pop-up window. He reses another pop-up window. What do I see? Nothing. The only thing worth noting is an NAPD contract, which I cannot score. Too few credits. Yes, my Gabe deck is very poor. Unfortunately, if I cannot get myself into HQ or siphon properly, I find that my Gabe deck is really struggling for credits. There's a huge downside to the way I'm playing. Although it's also attributed to my poor play. A good pilot would be able to handle my deck much better and be a flaw on credits. Inside job, remote. Give me agenda. Nope, it's an Adonis. Damn it. Well, since I got in, might as well trash it. Keep him poor. That's the main thing. Another item goes in. I can't be checking that all the time now. Knight hops back, and I make a HQ. No, that was stupid. Yep, I needed 2 credits to break the quandary, so I ran. I know he can rest stuff to stop me. What will it be? An Eli, right? Again, this is a very desperate play. If there was an Ichi on the board, I would have lost practically everything on the board. He solidifies his credit lead. Now he's at 10 credits, enough to pull off the biotic label or Sen. Yep, either one of them. I finally joined my York. Finally. But is it too late? Installing it still cost me 5 credits. Cost me all of it. At this point, it might actually be prudent to use same old thing on a sure gamble. Just so that I can get enough credits to start playing the game. I mean, it's not the best option, but sometimes I need to be flexible about it. I'm not sure if that would have been a good play, but I should have considered it. Here, I did something rather stupid. I have no idea why I did this. It seemed like Archives was the weakest link, so I jumped over there, but it still cost me 4 to get through Archives. And I'm only getting 2 back in return, because I cannot find my Desperado. At least I got a Vitruvius for my hard work, so that's that. And as you see, yes, Data Sucker and Knight do anti-synergize. It's not a very good combo, but I'm using Knight instead of Parasites because Knights allow me to perform siphons on Unrest Ice. Otherwise, the Corp can simply choose not to rest Ice. And there's the Viper. Alright, beat me with it. Yeah, it's time for me to get my York out. That server's looking scary, but can I contest it? I don't think so. I'm still dirt poor. I'm not finding any money, so I'm spending an entire turn clicking up for credits. Far from ideal. But this is usually what happens with HP. There's nothing much I can do about it. When I'm locked out of the 2 main servers I need to attack, Archives and HQ, there's nothing much I can do to gain back my economic footing. That's the problem. That's the problem with Gabe. I play Gabe because he presents a quandary to the runner, to the Corp. You let me into HQ, I gain credits. You don't let me into HQ, I still gain a lead over you. With information on the ice you run, I can now siphon you if you chose to keep me out of HQ. Anyway, York out. Indexing. Yeah, they're coming. With 6 creds, I bet that he wouldn't rest the middle ice. And it was. So it was. I threw the accelerator beta test right at the bottom of the stack because I knew I only had one turn to run. If I let him draw the accelerator beta test, he would score it the next turn and win, so I needed to delay him as far as possible. So he drew 1 of 4 remaining cards. I'm remembering that. He installs a Jackson and draws. This is bad. He just drew the accelerator beta test I buried. So it's now or never. If I don't get into HQ, I lose. I'm thinking of how to get into HQ. With 4 credits, I have a Corroder in hand, but that's not going to help. I don't have enough credits to make use of it. I could go for a Hail Mary run on R&D, which I do, because there's nothing else I can, I don't really have another choice. Victor, very well. Click through it. I don't really have a choice now, do I? Vitruvius, that puts me on 6 points. But that's not enough. I have 1 click left to score the last point. He has the ABT in hand. How do I get into his hand? There's no way. I don't have a ferry, and I can't click through Eli. Game. Overall, very badly played on my part. Biggest mistake, insufficient early aggression. Running without a rig is one of Gabe's strongest points. I neglected that. I should have used the knight to bomb the quandary, even though that's wasting a lot of clicks and my credits for a quandary that cost him 1 to rest. I needed to do that to maintain the edge over him and to force him to spend clicks to install ice. I didn't do that, so that's why I failed. Economy was a problem too. I had all the breakers that I needed in hand. I didn't even need a special order. York, Data Sucker, Corroder, that's all I needed. Rototaurus posed a problem, but that was the only on over archives. HQ and R&D were free for my picking. I just didn't have the credits to deal with it. Maybe a KT Jones would serve me well in my Gabe deck. I don't know. KT Jones is pretty slow. I'm a very early game oriented deck, so I think I should be rushing stuff out. And it goes back to the problem of early aggression. Ever since I included Data Sucker, I find myself not running aggressively enough. That's a problem. Need to fix it, and I can fix it through playing better. So that's what I'm aiming to do. That's all I have.